Free Fire stars Brie Larson and Charlton Copley. Charlton. I never know if I'm saying his name right. There's a group of gun buyers and a group of gun sellers that get together in a warehouse to do a transaction. Something happens where one of the underlings knows one of the other underlings and they get into a fight. And the movie becomes an hour and a half long shootout. I think the shooting starts like 10 minutes into this thing and it doesn't stop ever. I found this movie to be very frustratingly edited and horribly shot. A lot of the camera shots don't make any sense cinematically. It's a lot of people to the left or right of screen with their arms outstretched, pointing a gun, firing. There is an extreme lack of establishing shots for any of the sequences, so we have no idea where anyone is in relation to each other, which is important for a movie like this, which is just a bunch of people shooting at each other. The camera constantly breaks the 180-degree rule. I found myself getting very frustrated watching this movie. Something this simple should make a lot of sense in the language of film, and somehow this movie messes it all up. Especially now in a time where we have directors who are doing long take action sequences with a ton of stunt people or action stars doing multiple moves within a shot. The fact that this movie couldn't show me one person with a gun shooting another person with a gun in a single camera shot is very frustrating. This movie was not good. Speaking of not good, it's Cars 3. Can this series be over now? I'll say something for Pixar. They learned something from Cars 2. The amount of Mater in this movie is much lower than it has been for the first two. The character just grinds on my last nerve. But the plot of this film doesn't quite know what it wants to be. It wants to be a story about Lightning McQueen getting older, being passed by younger cars, and a somewhat mature story about how he deals with the fact that he is no longer the fastest car on the track. And if that were the only plot in the movie, that'd be fine, but there's this B plot about another car that's training him who's always wanted to be a racer, and she just needs the chance, and he just gives her the chance at the end of the movie, and they both win? I don't think that's how races work, but this movie got distracted on the way. It had a mature story, a story that, even for a kid's movie, could be somewhat relevant to their situation. But it just takes this winding path to get to the end, and by the end, it's like, what has this story become? This is Pixar's weakest series by a country mile. It's a car pun, I think. I don't know. That kind of humor is what's in this movie. It's bad. It's just bad. Climax is a movie? This thing, which was shot at presumably 24 frames a second, was directed by Gaspar Noé. I'd never seen one of his films, and I'd never heard of him until this movie appeared on Red Letter Media's channel. Dropping names again. So I watched it. I think I watched it. This is not a film that is meant to be watched and enjoyed as much as it's a film that is meant to be experienced. It's a film that you look back at and say, oh yeah, I saw that, and that's the end of the conversation. It surrounds a group of dancers at a dance academy that is seemingly in the middle of nowhere. The film starts with an extensive sequence where they are interviewed about their love for dance, and then they have a dance rehearsal, which is all one continuous single take. It's technically amazing. That part of the film looks very good. The single shot take is great. But then the rehearsal gets over, and we get multiple sequences with characters talking to each other, mostly about sex. And then the characters begin to realize that the drinks they're having to celebrate their successful rehearsal have been laced with LSD. And then everybody freaks out. The last hour or so of this thing is the dancers either becoming very depressed or having the time of their lives. And that part of the film is a series of single shot takes. At least they're stitched together to look like single shot takes, which is technically impressive, but what is happening makes it disorienting. Not to mention that the film has these slates that come up and say strange art-like phrases. One has a thing that says like, life is our greatest gift, and it just goes away, and that's that. There's 3 or 4 of those throughout the entire film that say some sort of message. The last one in the film is upside down. There's a sequence in the middle of the film that made my brain short circuit. I felt like I was on LSD. I don't know what LSD feels like, but I think it feels somewhat like that. In that sequence, he flashes a series of directors and band names on the screen, and they're only up there for a fraction of a second, and they just flash at you constantly. It just made my brain stop. I couldn't absorb the information at all. And at times I thought he was exploring the connection between violence on one hand and sex on the other hand. But just turns out it was just people freaking out on LSD. I think he had a lot of messages, and I don't think he got any of them across. Jay said that this movie made him feel bad. It didn't make me feel bad, it just confused me more than anything else. And like I said, I think this is a film that you're supposed to watch and just, it's an experience, and then it's over. And then when someone mentions it to you, be like, oh yeah, we had a shared experience. That was strange. And then move on with the conversation.